I want you to think back to your days of playing youth sports when you made a basket, scored the winning goal, hit a home run, or you crossed the finish line first. The crowd cheered, parents hugged you, coaches smiled, teammates celebrated you, lifted you up. And in that very moment, you weren't just a kid, you were significant, you were seen, you were enough. But when you lost, when you underperformed, when you made a mistake, silence, maybe even criticism, disappointment hung heavy all around you. And as a result, you began to develop a pattern of thinking, feeling, believing, and inevitably behaving, all focused on your connection, your attachment to a result. In this case, success or winning. So you wired yourself to believe, I only matter when I win. Winning equaled love. Success equaled safety, belonging, while losing equaled rejection. And now we fast forward all these years later. As an entrepreneur, a business owner, every deal, every quarter, every scoreboard moment is subconsciously tied to that childhood wiring dating back to youth sports. If you win, you're validated. If you lose, it feels like that same lonely silence from decades ago. And that is why detachment from results, from outcomes, is so challenging. And maybe for you, it wasn't sports. Maybe it was school and the impact what grades you brought home had on the way your parents showed you affection. Maybe you were one of many siblings and attention from your parents and caregivers was scarce. And what I want you to really hear in what I'm about to say is that your propensity to feel attached to results, to be wired to do more and achieve more, is a collection of learned patterns of thinking, feeling, believing, and behaving. And fortunately for you, it can also be unlearned. Welcome back to another episode of the Inner Game of Real Estate Success, the show that gives you the tools to master your mind, close with confidence, and thrive in both business and life. I'm your host, Paul Salter. I'm a mindset and performance coach, and I use hypnosis to help my clients get unstuck and out of their own way by dismantling the destructive patterns of thinking, feeling, believing, and behaving that keep them stuck. If you feel as if you're doing everything right, but still not getting the results you want and desire, you are in the right place. And just a reminder, we do this once a month, the special little show within the show. The last Thursday of the month, we do this deep dive into the inner workings of your mind, your subconscious patterns rooted in safety, familiarity, and comfort. All of these conversations designed to empower you with a new belief system, a new perspective and set of tools to get unstuck, out of your own way, and unlock your potential. And today's topic is all around attachment to results, learning how to detach from results and outcomes so that you can work smarter, more effectively, and experience an abundance of confidence, wealth, success, peace, and inner joy moving forward. And I'm so curious to know if that story from youth sports resonated with you. And maybe it was the same story cast in a different light. You brought home your report card and your heart was pounding. If it shows A's, you were celebrated. Parents took you out to dinner. They praised you. They smiled. Maybe even they rewarded you. Your teacher praised you. You felt worthy, loved, like you belonged. But if there was a B, or even worse, a C on that report card, that warmth quickly turned cold. Disappointment filled the room. The lesson you absorbed: love and approval only come when I deliver results. And this is not me suggesting that it was ever said outright, although candidly, it possibly could have been. But the message was clear. Your grades or your results equaled your worth. And we fast forward today and you chase closings, revenue, expansion because somewhere deep down, it feels like proof that you are enough. Yet, when results slow, it isn't just business pain. It's that childhood wound of not being celebrated, not being seen, not being worthy, not being enough. And that's why detachment from results, from outcomes, becomes a feeling that is so threatening because for decades, results have been your ticket to belonging. And again, I want to say this, I'm going to say this multiple times in today's conversation. Your attachment to results is a collection of learned beliefs, feelings, and behaviors. It can be unlearned. And I want to share another story. This is an actual real life story from one of my clients, a real estate agent I've been working with for a few months now. And as I got to know this individual and got to learn a lot more about him during our deep dive initial call, it appeared on paper, in those first few minutes of conversation, he had it all figured out. Strong book of business. He'd been in business for 11 years and he had this tenacity, this drive, this fuel that enabled him to never stop. And when I say never stop, he never stopped. But as we dug a little deeper, like I love to do, I began to get a sense and a much clearer picture of what was really happening behind the scenes, under the hood, offline, away from social media, if you will. Every single deal he was involved in was a verdict of his self-worth. If he closed, he was on top of the world. And sometimes riding this overconfidence chaotically without control. But if he didn't close, he spiraled. He spiraled into stress, shame, doubt. He tied his identity to his results so tightly that one bad month wasn't just a bad month. It was proof. It was proof in his mind that maybe he wasn't good enough. Maybe he shouldn't keep going. Maybe he didn't belong at that table. And that attachment came with a cost. He started pushing harder. He started pushing his clients harder. He started rushing through, half-assing, skipping his priorities, his processes, not doing his due diligence, forcing offers just to make it happen, even though the numbers told a slightly different story. He felt this false sense of urgency that drove him from an abundance mindset quickly, catastrophically into a scarcity mindset. And that scarcity, which is always wrapped up in fear, worry, doubt, and anxiety, it began to permeate. It began to bleed into every part of his life. At work, his team felt it. They could feel the volatility, the frustration, the fear, the anxiety. At home, his wife felt it. Distant dinners, a short temper, no real presence because he was glued to his phone, always refreshing numbers, sending emails, replaying deals and conversations in his mind. Even more, and probably most obvious, though he was oblivious at the time, his health suffered. Stress led to consistency in sleepless nights, skipped workouts, fast food being grabbed between showings. And the irony of this whole situation that I need you to hear is that the harder he clung to an outcome, the further he pushed success away. The harder he clung to an outcome, the further he pushed success away. He wasn't building his portfolio, his network. He was sabotaging it. Deals slipped through his fingers, not because he wasn't capable, but because his need for the outcome blinded him from the bigger picture. He didn't fail because of the market, the clients, or competition. He failed because he couldn't detach, because he couldn't because he let results dictate everything. His results defined him. Constantly, this chasing from a place of scarcity slowly and surely drained his energy, emotionally, physically, and mentally. And that's what we need to unpack and shift our focus to today. How to break free from this trap, discussing why detaching from results is the ultimate edge you need in both your business and your life. Now, I'm happy to report A few months into working with that individual, it's tough to recognize him. He's sleeping consistently. He's back in the gym. He's actually a leader. He's not a dictator. He's effectively communicating, delegating, taking ownership, taking consistent, intentional action. He's operating on what truly is urgent. And his entire team, his wife, are feeling the positive effects of these major changes he's been able to make. Because here's the truth. When you are overly attached to the results, more deals, trying to beat last month or last quarter or last year's total income or number of closings, there's a hidden cost to this attachment. Sleepless nights, replaying spreadsheets, conversations, and forecasts, pushing deals forward that are not good deals just to feel like you're doing something, to build a sense of false momentum, even when the numbers don't line up. You're operating from a place of I have to, rather than curiosity, pause, due diligence. Is this a good decision? Is this the best play? You're leaking energy. I can't stress that enough. When you are overly attached to results and outcomes, you are leaking energy. You're leaking energy that is felt by your team, by your significant other. It's felt by your prospective clients. They feel your fear, worry, anxiety, volatility. And this attachment, it creates this false sense of urgency. You rush, you cut corners, and you force things because you're afraid. And this ultimately shrinks your creativity, and this scarcity blinds you to alternatives, asking for help, and the abundance that's around you. And I can't help but picture another one of my clients who, when we started working together, she was pulling in about $750,000 a year. Yet it was taking on average 2 to 3 glasses of wine every single night just to fall asleep. And by the time she fell asleep, it was well after midnight. Her alarm would go off at 5:30 or 6, but she'd lay in bed 30, 60, maybe 90 minutes on and off with the snooze button. She'd skip her workout. She had an inconsistent meditation and self-care practice. She had an incredibly distant relationship with her husband, a non-existent sex life. She was burning through her energies, sacrificing all things self-care in pursuit of the chase of more. And the more that deals did not work out, the more it aided her, the more it drove her to push harder and harder, which means when she showed up for these conversations and opportunities to close, she was a shell of herself. She was so overly attached to an outcome, to success, to a closing or a result, that she pushed it further and further away. She exponentially reduced the likelihood of getting the deal. And that's what I need you to pause and reflect on. What have you begun to sacrifice that was once a non-negotiable part of your bulletproof process that allowed you to have the growth and success that you have experienced to date? Where did you start shifting your priorities? It's really important to understand that. You cannot let an attachment to an outcome, something that you, to be frank, know better than I do, is influenced by a significant number of variables outside of your control. You cannot let that dictate how you feel about yourself, how you take care of yourself, how you speak to and about yourself, and what you believe about yourself. Instead, you need to shift from an overly focused approach on outcome and results to remaining focused on your process. The proven process and collection of systems you know gives you the best opportunity to expand your network and close more deals. That is where your focus needs to remain. Here's the challenge so many of us face. It's fucking boring. After a while, the same thing over and over and over becomes monotonous. And we've got this little molecule within all of us that allows us to experience just this pure bliss and joy anytime we're exposed to a novel condition. And I'm referring to dopamine. We crave novelty. And if we're executing the same the same process relentlessly over and over, inevitably, What once brought you a massive surge in dopamine because you were closing and expanding and growing and leading, you become numb because you don't get the same chemical cocktail of feel good hormones every time you successfully execute this process when you've done it for the hundredth or thousandth time. So, as this monotony begins to take over, you start to develop a case of what I call shiny object syndrome. You want to do something different, bigger, more exciting, novel, new, because you've grown a sense of discomfort in doing the same thing over and over again. But that's your edge. When you can really refresh and learn to fall in love with again with your process, and you can celebrate and attach your identity and worth to asking honestly and objectively, did I execute my process to the best of my ability with integrity, with the utmost energy, optimism, positivity, and confidence? And if you can say yes to answer that question, that's a win. Boom, period. End of story. The results are going to take care of themselves. Now, I'll be the first to recognize easier said than done. Simple, not easy. So, one of the challenges that you and myself face boils down to expectation management. In many areas of life, we experienced or we are taught that there's a timely and an equal relationship between input and output. Let me give you an example. Maybe in one of your early high school or college jobs, you work 1 hour, you bill 1 hour, you get paid for an hour. The input, the output are one-to-one and predictable. Let's talk about cooking. You follow a recipe, you apply heat, and within minutes, you see raw ingredients transformed into a finished dish. And let's be honest, maybe not a few minutes there. But input to output, it's immediate, it's visible. Or maybe you're studying for an upcoming exam, certification, or license. You study a few hours and you immediately recall a little more information. You start to perform better on practice quizzes. And again, the input is more or less directly reflected in the output. It doesn't work that way in the real estate world, really in life, in entrepreneurship, because in real estate, you can work 40 plus hours on a single client or deal that never fucking closes, and the output is zero. In real estate, you can follow the recipe perfectly: due diligence, networking, underwriting, customer care. But timing, market shifts, or client decisions can delay that meal, so to speak, from weeks, months, or altogether. And in real estate, you can study, you can prospect, you can prepare as diligently as ever, but you still face lagging or inconsistent results because of external factors beyond your control. When you are overly attached to results and outcome that you don't have control over, you create a massive gap between expectation, because you feel you have control, because you haven't understood that it's not a direct relationship between input and output. But within that gap between expectation and reality, you invite an opportunity for doubt, worry, disappointment, shame, anger, sadness, regret, all to start taking up that space. And that emotional cost compounds and inevitably bleeds into every area of your life. So, the first thing I want to share with you, and I have an imagination you already do a pretty good job at this. You need to always be casting as many lines into the water as possible with the understanding of the lag effect principle. There is not a direct or proportionate relationship between input and output in life, entrepreneurship, and specifically real estate. But the more lines, the strategic partnerships and relationships you can begin to build, the more opportunity you have to eventually get a bite. It might happen in a week, a month, maybe a year. If you continue to refine and double down on execution of your processes, baiting the hook, casting it to the right spot, setting the line, putting the rod back into the rod holder, If you do that with the utmost consistency, attention to detail, positivity, optimism, and hope, inevitably you're going to get a bite. And the more you can do this, the more bites you get, the more you reel in those big deals and bigger, better relationships. But there's a lag effect. And you need to understand that. More importantly, you need to appreciate, you need to respect that, because this allows you to dramatically shift your perspective. So now the gap between expectation and reality is minuscule, maybe non-existent, which means there's no room for those feelings of doubt, disappointment, frustration, and anger to creep in, which means you remain in control. You're not letting this irrational emotion hijack the steering wheel of your decisions, your actions, and how you feel about yourself. You remain in control of the day, your decisions, and your actions. You've got to focus on your process. You've got to focus on your process. And if any of the stories, the examples I've shared thus far resonate with you, it's now time to get curious about your own story. When a deal falls through, when you don't achieve a goal, a result, number of closings, number of gross dollars earned compared to last month, last quarter, or last year, what is the story you tell yourself about what that means? What do you believe is perceived by others about you? What do you believe about yourself? When you win big, close a lot of deals, have a lot of financial success or otherwise, compared to when you don't. How does each of those, if we put them on two opposite ends, extreme ends of the spectrum, how do they both impact how you feel about yourself, how you show up, how you do or do not take action? Why is there such a big incongruency between the two? Why are you giving power to something beyond your control? Again, the results and outcomes that we're speaking about, you have less control than you might have initially thought prior to listening to this conversation. There will always be a handful of variables that influence the final product, outcome, or success here that are beyond your control. Yet, if you can put all of your energy and attention into what you do have control over, your processes, you can better remain operating from a neutral place. And that gives you a clear head, an ability to quickly, effectively, efficiently make rational, logical decisions that are in your best interest. That gives you the best opportunity to expand your awareness, to invite in creative solutions and problem solving strategies, to continue casting more lines into the water, to eventually, inevitably, close more deals, expand your network, build your empire, and bring your dreams to fruition. So, this lens of curiosity that I keep hinting at, that's the lens that you need to bring to some of these moments of silence, these journaling sessions, is getting curious. When, why, and how did I develop this attachment to results, to outcomes, to success, to winning? And get curious, how did this once help me? Is that how you got praise when you were younger? Is that how you were shown affection or felt worthy, deserving, like you fit in and belong? And begin to understand that, again, this is all learned. This pattern of being was made and designed to help you, to protect you, to get your needs met. But you've outgrown it. And it's time to release it. And as you continue down that path of reflection and curiosity, where we get to become a little more tactical, and a takeaway from today is you've got to start redirecting the energy you're currently spending on obsession over results and outcomes beyond your control back into self-care, protecting your energy, your peace of mind, prioritizing sleep, exercise, good food choices, detachment from email, your phone, social media, anything and everything related to work, to recharge your batteries, recharge your soul so that you can come back fresher, more effective, better able to communicate, problem solve, think creatively, and overcome any and every obstacle that you encounter. So I'm going to share a couple prompts with you. I encourage you to write these down or come back and listen. Just some prompts for your next journaling session or your next quiet drive or the remainder of this drive as you're listening to the conclusion of this episode, things to chew on. Number one, where in your life today are you still chasing the same validation you sought as a child? Number two, when you feel the need to rush or force a deal, ask yourself, is this true urgency or is this fear, scarcity, disguised as urgency? Number three, if tomorrow's deal falls apart, what story do you tell yourself about what that means about you? Number four, what's one area of your business where you can score yourself on execution, process commitment, rather than results that week? And number five, if results, or if we assume results always lag behind execution, what's one process you're committed to trusting, even if the payoff hasn't shown up yet? Where do you need to stop digging up the roots and trust that growth is happening beneath the surface? I know I gave you plenty to chew on, plenty to consider today. And I encourage you to listen to this episode again and to do so with a note taking pen, pencil, something to type with ready, handy. There's a lot to dig into here. I remind you that your attachment to results, to outcomes, specifically results and outcomes beyond your control, is the silent, invisible sabotager that I have now shed a bright fucking spotlight on, holding you back from next level success, keeping you stuck in a perpetual pattern of 2 steps forward, 3 steps back, burning the candle at both ends, deteriorating your relationships with your team, your family, your significant other, your children. And it's time to let go. It's safe to let go. Give yourself permission to let go of the attachment to results, to prioritize your processes, and trust in your processes and yourself that the results will come so long as you remain committed and consistent. I thank you for tuning in to another episode of the inner game of real estate success. If today's episode helped shift your mindset or it gave you a new perspective, share it with another realtor, share it with another individual passionate about personal development who's ready to grow. And if you're ready to go deeper, and to confront and eliminate what's holding you back once and for all, then I invite you to apply for mindset and performance coaching with me. You can use the link below in the show notes to schedule a mindset coaching discovery call with me. And until next time, keep showing up, stay grounded, and remember your greatest edge is the one between your ears.